Hey everyone, this is the crew of Accessible Intelligence. We are back for season two. And in season one, we discovered a few interesting things, but nothing more than a brave, new, challenging, confusing world for Gen Z. And now we're in season two, and we want to do something about it. Who exactly are we, in case you have not met us yet? I am Sam. I produce this podcast and also anything Notion related you might see as a result of this season and future work. I probably have played a heavy.
Hi guys, I'm Megan. I run the Instagram and TikTok account Gen Z Bestie. I talk about all things tech and startups, and I'm currently founding a company called Fig, which is aiming to help people figure out what to do with their lives.
I have a Substack called Scaffold.
What's your name?
I'm Hillary, sorry. I have a Substack called Scaffold. Within that, I have a subseries called Muses of In Between, where I document my conversations with friends about topics related to AI, critical thinking, and education.
Hi, I'm Austin. Like the world, I'm also very confused and hopefully a little bit brave.
You are.
I've swapped between a lot of different things, done some AI-generated analysis. Currently, mostly write a lot of articles on dubbed This Week in the World about political, economic, cultural stuff, technological stuff going on in the world. We'll see what I do next, but here we are.
Awesome. Something that we had talked about on the first season was how manifestos are in. It's about to be 2026 in a few hours, and everyone's talking about what's in and out. Apparently, manifestos are very in the tech world. I hope they're still in. I hope we're not too late to the trend. So we decided if they can do it, we can do it as well. And we wrote a little manifesto for what we're trying to do. And this is the introduction to launch. So Austin and Hillary, who worked the most on it, will now give an oral reading of it to everyone's pleasure. So, Austin?
And I quote, "The system is broken. How can Gen Z succeed? Growing up, we've internalized a vision of meritocracy. If you work hard, success will find you. But now, we've seen every stage of the trusted path. You go to college, graduate with a degree, find a job, build a career, being disrupted. First of all, people no longer see college as worth the investment. An NBC News poll finds that as many as 63% of registered voters believe that a four-year degree is, quote, not worth the cost because people graduate without specific job skills and a large amount of debt to pay off. Two, those who nonetheless attend college find themselves adrift in an educational environment saturated by AI. A 2024 survey by Inside Higher Ed finds that 3 in 10 students are not clear when they are permitted to use AI in their coursework. But 86% of students use it anyway, and void of any smart university policy, they're increasingly doing so to, quote, get quick answers rather than deepen their understanding. 3, even after making it through college, people are struggling to attain the promised job on the other side. Between 2019 and 2025, the unemployment rate for young college graduates increased by 2.63 times more than the overall unemployment rate. Anecdotally, we hear about college graduates prepared for white-collar professions instead seeking minimum wage service work. We see the superstars of our modern economy, like Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, predicting that AI could wipe out as many as half of all entry-level white-collar jobs in the next 5 years. Finally, those who are lucky enough to land a job may find themselves wholly unfulfilled in those roles. A New York Times opinion piece on the subject provocatively titled itself, "For Gen Zers, work is now more depressing than unemployment." The rise of remote work has only compounded this issue. While the World Economic Forum predicts that the number of global digital jobs will rise by approximately 25% in the next 5 years, this outcome is largely out of line with Gen Z's preferences.
The 4 of us graduated high school during the COVID pandemic and college at the beginnings of the AI revolution. We grew up internalizing the conventional path to success, higher education, and to job, but are finding ourselves navigating an economic reality that is entirely different from what our parents, guardians, and teachers prepared us for. We've witnessed society transform. But more than that, we've seen the people in power, politically, economically, and socially, take advantage of this moment to solidify their advantage. Meanwhile, those of us who are just beginning to assert our presence in the world are left to fend for ourselves. While we struggle to adapt to a system that has failed us, our plight is perceived as reflecting personal shortcomings. Our goal is not to assert any particular Gen Z perspective. Rather, it is simply to acknowledge the existence of a uniquely Gen Z perspective, one that is caught at the crossroads of expectations and reality. From this common understanding, we hope to create a space for our peers, regardless of what they're doing in this current moment. working a corporate 9 to 5, building a startup, pursuing side quests, picking up part-time roles here and there, and or feeling completely overwhelmed sitting in their childhood bedroom. We seek to build solidarity with all of these perspectives, and from this basis, collectively imagine paths to change. At this moment, many Gen Z feel as if the economy has left us behind. Our goal is to empower Gen Z to stake a claim in the society that we're actively inheriting.
Beautiful. As I gracefully take that computer back from you,
End quote.
end quote, yes, including what I just said. I'm curious to stay on the manifesto for a second. Why do we write this, guys? Maybe let's start there. Why do we feel the need for a manifesto?
I think, well, actually, why don't we turn it back on to you, Sam? Because I think you were the one who sort of proposed the idea, right? You thought that we needed to really level set, and I can go into why I was supportive of it. Maybe going back to you to start.
Great, that question did not spark enough responses, clearly. Well, as we had talked about, as much as we make fun of manifestos, and some of them, like, admittedly are just a little silly. I know, like, these manifestos, whether it's by like your Sam Altmans or your Mark Andreessens, of course they talk about serious things. That's not what I'm getting at, but they're just like a little silly. Like they're a little. I think with manifestos, like you are trying to drive to something very serious, but I think the idea of even using the word manifesto so colloquially and just having them out, like the most prominent example is like this call to socialism, right? Like that's not what we're doing here. But I think what I liked about the idea of this manifesto, which hopefully will be set out via the Mindful Notion Substack by the time this episode is out, is that it allows us to really put into words that hopefully people can understand about this feeling that I see more and more through Gen Z, which is that feeling of shame, that feeling that you did everything right, quote unquote, right. You went to a good high school, you worked hard, you went to college, you went into the Bermuda Triangle. Make him explain that a bit more, and then you suddenly can't get anything. You can't get any job. I'm one of those people who graduated, was about to start a service job. That's why I had my Starbucks apron. I never actually worked at Starbucks, but I have the apron now. And you kind of feel like even though everybody at the institutions you were at were telling you that they were setting you up for success, you still feel like you were set up for failure because you don't get what you are inherently told you should get, which is that well-paid, well-compensated job that's leading you somewhere greater. So I think, on the other hand, what we're trying to do with the manifesto and with Launch more broadly is start to find those solutions, because I don't think we're unique in the sense of calling this out, this problem of like Gen Z. You could call it disruption, you could call it disenchantment, you could call it anger, but I think it is unique for a group to come together to try to create, at the very least, a platform to figure it out, which I think we all are doing in our individual ways as well. So that was the original thought.
I think adding on to that, we're all four of us are gravitating toward this really big question of like, we're actually big questions about like Gen Z, economy, career, life, fulfillment, passion, what have you, right? It's a huge question. And we knew that like we were passionate about it. But to me, I view this manifesto as really to this point about communication, right? And I think there are two sides to this. First is internal communication. Like the four of us are interested in this. We talk about it in some way or another, write about it, create around it in our content. But what exactly is the problem that we're trying to address here? So the manifesto, first and foremost, was an opportunity for us. The word that I like to use is level set, right? Really make sure that we're on the same page and that we can concretely identify like the aspect of the problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And the other side of that is obviously it's external facing, right? Like once we identify our group's perspective on this problem, how do we assert this to an external audience and help them see it from this perspective as well?
Yeah, agreed. So with Launch, go ahead.
I also want to add really quickly. You were very right when you said that manifestos are so silly.
Yeah.
They're extremely silly. It's literally asserting that you can take up space in a room. You're just putting out your beliefs and saying, listen to this. And I think there's something to, I'm not sure if you all felt it, but it feels strange to write a manifesto, especially from our perspective. And then you're saying like it's normal for people like Mark Andreessen, like people who are in these super privileged, super powerful positions.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we're trying to talk about, is that it's important for people in other positions such as ourselves to have the confidence, to have the audacity to write and put out a manifesto as well.
Right. So that's why launch, which is, again, hopefully by the time that this recording goes out, has been published as our external facing website, which is also a beautifully designed Notion page for Notion lovers out there. I hope you appreciate it, the tastefulness that hopefully you see in it. I think the biggest thing that launch can do is highlight the work we are doing in a way that you would not get if you just looked at Austin's Substack or Megan's Instagram or Hillary's Substack or my podcast stuff. The idea is that launch is this hub for people to see that we are something greater than the sum of our parts, and then also to invite people to get involved. And you can see more of that when you go to the website. It will be linked. And in the spirit of highlighting our work, I want to start with Megan. Has been killing it on Instagram after killing it on TikTok. Are we at 12K yet on Instagram? Yes, we're at 12K. We're past 12K. And you were like 7K like a week ago or something like that. It's been a good time to be a follower of Megan, Gen Z bestie. And specifically though, I want to talk about that video where I referenced the Bermuda Triangle and for you to explain a bit about that concept. And I think that will resonate with a lot of people.
So I did not come up with this concept. It's from a book.
She cannot take credit.
No, I actually cannot take credit. There is a man named Simon Ventura who wrote a book about it called The Bermuda Triangle of Talent. And I just think it really succinctly put the whole concept that we've been talking about for quite some time very succinctly. But there are a lot of ways to kind of talk about it. But essentially what the idea is we see some of the most high achieving peers of ours in college come into college with the intent of pursuing very high impact careers, whether it be in science research or maybe it's in engineering, and then kind of follow the same pathway of pursuing 3, maybe 4 careers. And those tend to be consulting, banking, big tech, and law. And it's kind of this idea of this brain drain. And if the smartest students had the opportunity to pursue literally anything and solve any problem in the world, why is it that we're all choosing these same careers that don't historically have as much of a wide-reaching impact? And so this video that I had made yesterday that got over 1 million views was about this very topic and how the career platform I'm trying to build is aiming to address that problem. And yeah, it was kind of crazy to me how much this story kind of resonated with so many people. And I think that kind of experience of putting this video out there and having it reach so many made me realize how interesting it is to be on social media now and how you can just touch so many people with something that you wouldn't have been able to have that kind of reach if not for social media. So
Yeah, I love that. And we're all very proud to see that video and many future videos blow up as well. I think before we dive deeper into marketing, which we will, let's talk a bit more about Hillary and Austin. You guys have done a lot of Substack over the past year. And could you talk a bit about how you felt when you were starting that first, like why, and then how your Substacks have evolved to now, and now that they're on launch, what people can expect if they want to check out more of your pieces. But yeah, how have your Substack journeys been so far?
Well, mine has been very long and circuitous.
Say
I
more.
started about a year ago, actually, funnily enough, because I felt with using AI at work that I was losing my ability to write at all. And very much so tied to what you're talking about with the Bermuda Triangle TM, that with the work I was doing, it felt like I was outside of what I wanted to be doing. And with every day, every week, every month I was in it, I was only getting further away. I was getting almost locked within a track. And so I was worrying whether I'd ever be able to, get back to that. And so writing on Substack and writing about what I was passionate in college, which was like history, was geopolitics, all that, was a way for me to kind of, hook in and keep myself engaged and thinking about it. And so at first it was a lot of, individual articles, and it's very much so changed as I've had more or less time, as well as I've had different ideas. One of the things I did, as I mentioned in the opening in the trailer, was using AI to generate articles. And so I was trying to think of how can I use AI to kind of disrupt this think tank industry that is so very gate kept by prestige, by connections. And so that's what I've been working in the past. What I'm thinking about going forward working on is something that I think I can have more impact on and can be more me. Because for the past month or so, I've been doing this series called The Week in the World, where I just cover news stories from the past week, add my thoughts to it. I still try to incorporate a lot of critical thinking on ideas such as socialism, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, all the isms, bars. But
I don't know if you like self-comment, Mars. I think you need
everyone was thinking
another
it, but they couldn't
person
say
to
it.
validate,
So,
but sure.
but what I'm thinking
continue.
of working on going forward is looking at AI and all that it's going to affect, all that it is affecting, all that goes into building it from a both historical, political, and macroeconomic perspective. Because I think, and this is something that was very disheartening for me, was when I do This Week in the World, when I cover things politically or whatever, there's a distance to it. It's more commenting. It's just my thoughts, but there's no way you either, be in the room where it happens or it really affects anything. But AI feels like such, and this is getting back to maybe why AI disrupts the Bermuda Triangle in terms of creating startup opportunities. But it feels like it's such cutting edge, such frontier, that even someone like myself who doesn't work in AI, who doesn't do much, can still think about it. And just by thinking about it, that is the frontier in a way. So you can hopefully maybe expect that.
What's been the favorite article so far that you've written, either for Substack or a different platform?
My favorite one. Honestly, the one I think my favorite ones have been that have come about after reading a book and thinking about it and using the writing to more solidify, cement, and crystallize my ideas into both understanding the book better and integrating it within my worldviews. And one of these I did on my alternative subsite called Atlas, which was another side project. That was called Capital is Power. And it was after reading a book that talks about, you know, basically the Asian perspective to colonization. You always get it from the European perspective, why it happened. But it was talking about what were the biggest Asian intellectual thinkers of the time reacting to it. And from that came this idea that capital, which is something that is so mundane in our current world, actually is so laden with power and laden with control in ways we don't think about.
Love it. Hillary, you've done a beautiful series this year, in my opinion, called Musings. You're interviewing your friends one-on-one. And I think answering this very important questions that our work brings up too, like why are Gen Z feeling this way? How are they figuring things out? What haven't they figured it out? Is that kind of what you expected with Musings, or has this deviated from what you originally had planned for the series?
Yeah, definitely. When I started Musings, it was a very structured exercise where I was like, I am interested in these three themes:
Yeah.
AI, education, critical thinking. And basically, my interviews were very much structured around these three things. I was like, what are your thoughts on this? And I was very interested in people's personal reflections. And that was always, what drew me to it, what led me to keep coming back to it week after week. But over time, I increasingly saw these themes not as like, I no longer wanted to pursue them for their own sake, but rather use them as like a means to encounter people's lived experiences. Because I think that the beauty of these three themes in particular is that everyone has some sort of relationship with it. It doesn't have to be positive. It doesn't even have to be super like significant. Like some people I've interviewed never use AI or don't really use AI
Yeah.
at all, but still it undeniably impacts their lives because they hear about it, right? They exist in a society that, AI is like driving everything economically, politically, culturally, what have you, right? So, in terms of the way that it's evolved, it's really become a lot more focused on the people who I'm interviewing and more on platforming their perspectives. Like in the beginning, I think it was as more of an academic or intellectual exercise of sorts, just like what are people thinking? But now I view my project more as a documentary of sorts of my friends. And above all, what I care about is making sure that they feel like their stories are authentic. And I
Yeah.
want to be the platform that helps tell their stories. And the main thing is just like to keep it focused would be these three organizing themes. But it doesn't, like, if it doesn't happen, I don't force it either. And I guess sort of putting my work into perspective with Austin and Megan's in particular a little bit, like it's around similar themes, right? As you said, it's like all themes relevant to launch as well. It's things that are happening at a societal level, things that we're all observing. But again, I think what I what the gap that I was trying to fill was really like, what are people thinking about it? How are people actually reacting? Right? Like everyone knows about like AI is happening, right? Or like people know like, oh, people are really dissatisfied with their jobs, right? Or like, oh, I could theoretically, pursue a career in content creation, or I could be a founder. But how do people actually feel about it? And actually, in a lot of my responses, I found a lot of, well, I would say this is perhaps a bit of a strong word, but tragedy, in the sense that I think people are aware of the opportunities, of the risks, and of the fact that there are young people who have so much potential ahead of them. But people still feel very confined by the set of expectations of what they should do. And then at our age of like being between the ages of 22 to 25 ish, right? People feel like they're locked into patterns that, at least in the short term, but short term can extend into medium term, into long term. It's like we feel stuck. So that's also a broader concept that I may be exploring a little bit more into the future, but still TBD.
Yes. And for you, what's been a favorite article from the past year, given that two of your articles relate to two subjects here, so you don't need to pick between us per
It
se.
could be a future one.
Could be one that you haven't done yet with the other person in this room.
Maybe I'll point to a thought piece that I actually submitted on Atlas, or published with Atlas rather, which is "You Too Can Change the World." I liked it because I viewed it as my manifesto of sorts, where it was like, it wasn't an especially novel idea. It was basically just like your perspective on AI. You need to be able to understand it as something that works for you, essentially. You need to see it as like, you need to see agency within it. Basically, it's more than just a tool. You can read the article, but basically what I liked about it was just the opportunity. It was a reflection of all the thinking that I have done on the subject, whether it be like with my friends through my conversations, or like the research that I've been doing. And it's been cool to have Substack as a platform to do it, because it gives me the opportunity to not just do like my interviews and everything, but also the opportunity to publish more like op-ed like pieces, of which that was one.
Yeah, I was hoping you would say that one actually, because we, the three of us, did a podcast episode about it on Mindful Notions. It was called Debate: How Can AI Help Young Professionals Change the World? And even though that one did not include Megan, I did feel like that felt like the start of what eventually became accessible intelligence, and now is taking on a new form as well with Launch, because I feel like it's one thing to have a conversation about any topic we've brought up so far in this episode over like a dinner with a friend, or at a bar. Those are the only two places I really socialize right now, so I guess those two. But it's another thing to actually do it in a more public facing way, whether it's like op-ed or a podcast or what we're trying to do now. And I think, but it's something that it's on so many of our minds, which is like the craziest thing. And I think something that I really liked when I read your piece and both of your pieces from this year, it's this idea of creating resources for Gen Z by Gen Z. Like, it's not that the resources that have already been created from people who are older and more experienced are bad. In fact, like, they're usually helpful. But I think I'm getting a little sick of being treated like a specimen. Like, Gen Z is like this, and like this is why Gen Z isn't dating. This is why Gen Z like can't. And I'm like, I know why these things are happening. Like, I don't have all the answers, but like I think at this point I know enough where like I can talk to people about it. I can have my own perspective. And I think, Megan, you're like the most public out of all four of us on this specific topic. Like, what are the reactions usually when you are breaking down what this brave new journey looks like for a Gen Z full-time founder? And what do you find like heartening about the reaction? And then maybe what do you find that could be like discouraging about it too, based on the reactions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, honing on exactly what you said, I think there's a lot of fatigue when it comes to Gen Z hearing about themselves from the perspective of people who are not Gen Zers talking about our generation, telling us exactly like what we should be thinking, why our reality is the way it is. And I think it's very true. It's kind of like we read about it all the time from newspapers. We just see like Gen Z as the headline. But I think what has been kind of cool to see from the reactions from my content is people just like really resonating, be like, that is my lived experience. I feel like I relate so much hearing it come from someone who's had that same exact lived experience. And I think that's also, I guess, made me realize how important, or okay, not to put like self-importance on it, but like I think it's so cool what we're doing with Launch, because I think there truly is that gap. Like we are constantly force-fed content about ourselves, but not from our own perspectives. And I think people are kind of just missing that. But it's been really cool to see people in my DMs being like, yeah, thank you for like vocalizing exactly what I was feeling. And that's been cool. What's been disheartening? I don't know. I guess maybe it's interesting. There isn't so much like a public space or a space that feels inclusive enough, perhaps, for people in our generation to be like, yes, I feel like there is like somewhere an outlet where I can go to find kind of like solidarity and experience. Maybe that's why this is resonating so much, because it's kind of hard to find spaces like that. And I think that's what we all said when we got into building accessible intelligence and going into Launch, is what we really wanted to do, to create a space that feels like you can be a part of it, where we're speaking about our own experience, to kind of reach out and be like, yeah, this is what you're going through is not abnormal. You're not alone. This is kind of like what we're all going through at the same time. But yeah, I feel like that's what content has kind of given me the perspective of most recently.
Do you guys have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, and what you said at the end there really reminds me of, there's this quote either from an article or that Sam had said, but along the lines of, the expectations are the same, but the rules have changed in terms of the world. And that, I think, is something that across a broad spectrum of people, you would find agreement. You'd find people that have felt that, but don't really know where to take that. And I see Launch as somewhere, like you said, ecosystem or space where that is acknowledged, that, we know that the expectations are the same. This is why we're feeling this, because the rules have changed. And so we physically can't keep up, or there's this disconnect. So then what are the new rules? And that's kind of what Launch in a way could be.
Hill?
I'm also someone who believes very strongly in support systems and role models. And I think
As a role model herself.
Anyway, moving on. But I think that on the internet, there are lots of individual role models. Like, to be fair, lots of really cool people doing really cool things. But the individualism of it all makes it difficult to resonate, because it's easy to like over-index on their personal circumstances, whether it be like, oh, they come from a privileged background, or like, oh, they like went to Stanford, or oh, they have like super technical knowledge, right? But I think here, I mean, the four of us all come from different perspectives, right? The goal is to, represent a diversity of perspectives in some ways, but also to be like a very solid set of, I think, role models in some ways, but also just to like, maybe that's actually not the best word. It's more like support system, I think, is a better word, where it's like, it's okay. Like, we're all like, the four of us are in this together, and we want to, as a group, empower others. And I think it's like first showing, and this is like kind of the tension between internal and external that I was referencing before as well, but like first showing solidarity among the four of us, and the goal is to extend that to the rest of Gen Z as well in some ways.
Yeah, I think the goal here is definitely not like, look how great we are as a four-person group. And if there's any inclination that anybody at any time can feel free to just like knock us down, because that's the last thing we want to communicate. It's more about how we think the four of us have identified a problem that people are aware of but haven't verbalized, or just frankly haven't done enough about. And we want to start something that eventually other people who do feel passionate about this and do have things to contribute can get in. That is definitely the goal, where we want to make this feel like a true community. And I can say that word since I work in community, and I'm not using it in the cliche way that people have tended to use it. On the topic of just people who aren't in Gen Z, not even like maliciously, but just like misinterpreting us, I think there was this quote from Rachel Sennett, who is, I think, technically Gen Z. I hope that's right. I might not getting that wrong, but she's been a very Gen Z show with I Love LA. It's on HBO. First season is finished. I thought it was great. And this quote that I shared with the group already was her saying, I see older people on podcasts saying, you just need to mess around in your 20s. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Because for young people, it feels like we're already behind. Anytime I've accomplished anything, it's never felt like enough. And it's not that I'm complaining, I'm really lucky, but it's been one thing after another. Right as I entered the workforce, first it was school, COVID hit, then a chaotic presidency, then another, then industry strikes, forest fires, AI. Everything feels unstable. There's never a sense of I'm good. It's more like what's next. And as we wrap up this topic, does anyone have thoughts on what part of that resonates with you? Because I think it hits on a lot of similar themes, but it does, like, that is a quote where I feel seen. I very much feel seen. And yeah, anybody have reactions to that quote? Close this segment.
I think that stands out a lot to me because I mean everyone always hears, mess around in your 20s. And I think to some degree it's good advice. Like that's literally what we're doing right now. In a way, it's kind of messing around.
Manifesto is just us
trying to find alternative. Exactly. Marx did it. Why not us? And I think I'd want to clarify that like when it's easy to look at Gen Z, not to speak for all of Gen Z, but to look at it as complaining. And to hear that quote and to say, okay, well, every generation goes through disruptions or every generation goes through, no one has it figured out. But I think now especially, and it goes back to that quote of the rules are different, but the expectations are the same. It feels like now more than ever, though there's disruption all around us, and there's always been disruption around everyone, the paths that have been laid out as generational guidelines are gone. They're obliterated. And that is potentially, we shall see, only going to happen more and more with AI. When I was back home for this break, I was watching a lot of movies with my brother. And when you watch on, certain services, you get a lot of ads. What was insane is AI ChatGPT was released 3 years ago, maybe. At least half the ads were AI generated. And it was insane to see something that a technology released 3 years ago was so if an ad wasn't generated by it, it was talking about it. And there can only be so many ramifications going forward. And it feels like, as we said, maybe every generation has had disruption, but in terms of figuring out how to move forward, I feel like it's never been as confusing or blurred as now.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, it's kind of just also we just the rules are so different though that even what our parents and grandparents experience, like it can't quite compare. Like how, I mean, Hillary's done a lot of work around critical thinking and AI because we just don't have frameworks at all in place to even like feel like we can grasp onto anything. It's like, how do we think critically when we're given this tool that is really hard to resist the temptation of using because it's in our pocket, it's in our hand at all times. It's kind of, yeah, it's patronizing in a way to hear people who are not Gen Z just be like, you guys have it so easy. You guys have technology we didn't have. But the technology is so disruptive that there's just chaos and people, it's kind of hard to feel like I want to listen to people who are trying to feed me advice that just doesn't, there's just a disconnect.
I think both Megan and Austin talked about the points of there's more opportunities now than ever, which is definitely a big part of like what you mentioned. But I think the other part that I want to draw attention to is the fact that our generation, maybe give or take a bit, but like I would say our rule followers. I feel like that's another part of it too, which is like because higher education has become sort of a lot more accessible, for example, like even like white collar jobs and all of these things are becoming a lot more accessible. Like, I mean, I feel like in my parents' age, it was not all that crazy just like start a business. You know what I mean? Like when you're young, like just it's not that crazy. But now, like I feel like people in our generation, we've also been taught like, okay, like if you follow this particular path to success,
Right,
you will get there. So in that way, like I feel like we are rule following in a way that's also unique, which is what makes this especially contentious, right? Yes, there's a wider range of opportunity, but it's sort of within like presented to a generation that has been taught to chase sort of a very narrow path in many ways.
Yeah, and the path just isn't adapted fast enough to how the world works. I mean, one thing that I hope we'll talk more about in future episodes is like resumes are so irrelevant, or at least the way that I learned about them in institutions. It's like no one cares what verb you're using to describe your one internship that's relevant. It's like show me something that you've built on Substack or you've built with Fig, or like if you're more technical, like there it's almost like with the disruptiveness of AI, that is where I think people should be putting their chips more into being just like different than their peers. So that's how they stand out versus like I just really doubt people are looking that closely at resumes or cover letters at this point, or even if they're looking at it. I mean, I feel like I quote this article a lot, but the Atlantic article, never forget, is like job seekers are using AI to apply, and then like HR is using AI to hire. No one's getting hired. Like that is just such a good headline, one of the best headlines of 2025 in my opinion. But it's so true. It's like, why are you putting effort into that versus like building something that just could be useful? Like I think with those opportunities, it's something that I would hope sooner rather than later, but at some point like institutions, especially higher ed, can grasp a bit more, because that's still at this time where like most of the talent who could utilize the AI the best are going. So why is there that mismatch? I mean, there's a lot of answers to that question, but I think that's something that I think about a lot. Let's talk about marketing. Let's switch gears a little bit. So we made an Instagram. I think we're at 6 followers. So it's a slightly less than what Megan has. And Megan is the creator of the Instagram, and I was like hardly following. Like I FaceTimed you, and then like I posted some clips. Ironically, not with you. My apologies. I'll find more clips with you. But let's start with you, Megan. What does marketing look like for Launch? Why are we doing it this way? And where are we going to take it?
Yeah. So I think like from the beginning, we like dabbled with the thought of doing an Instagram, and then we didn't for season 1. But I think for season 2, having had more practice with Instagram itself, I felt like it could really level up just the reach that we get with accessible intelligence launch related things, because we individually each do very well, the topic is very much similar, very different mediums of work. And I have just found time and time again social media as a platform for distribution to just be so powerful. And I guess when you think about it, you could post something onto a personal website, and the only people who would know about where that piece of content would be is if they knew you and had the link to that. But what Instagram or just social media in general gives you the power of is the power of numbers, because the algorithm does all the work for you. If you know how to play the algorithm to your advantage to push your things out to the target audience that you have in mind, then basically it just does all that work for you. And so kind of going into season 2 was really kind of cool to be able to feel more confident and being like, yeah, we're going to do an Instagram and just set it up and see how that goes. But I guess the idea behind the Instagram is to be a centralized place where anyone can find anything that any of the 4 of us are working on at any given time, and kind of keep posted on how we're all building our own individual projects, but more in public, so that you can kind of have a centralized place to return to if you ever want to see what we're up to. So, yeah.
Yes, and right now we're doing a fun challenge of, is it called like an hour each day, or not each day, each hour we are posting pictures of our lives. So Hillary, Austin, how's that going for the less influencers of us? How's that going so far? Because we're in it right now, guys. We were taking pictures before this. So how are we feeling?
I would like to claim the mantle. I
Of
think I'm the person furthest away from being an influencer. As much of like I'm basically stuck in the Stone Age with my Substack. If I write and it's something to answer your question.
yeah, let's maybe maybe we get back to that.
To answer your question,
How's it going? Yeah, how is the?
I don't do a lot. So
That's
it's a little
not
hard.
true.
But
Were you on a run this morning? Was that what that picture by the water
no,
was?
it's on a walk.
I
My
mean,
brother was
counts.
visiting. To integrate it, writing a Substack Instagram has always been this ghost, this very amorphous figure in the distance of, I know it would be better for my content. I know it's better for it being discovered. I know it's better, and I know there's so many trends that you can hop on, but it's just been something that's very hard for me. It seems different from me. It seems like there's a disconnect. So lucky we have Megan, who is our guide on this journey.
The captain of the ship. Like captain
Yeah.
of the ship.
But I think that's something, maybe after to talk about, but how important it is to enter into what the attention economy, which is, as you said, it is just the way people grow, be discovered. You have to enter into someone else's ecosystem in a way. But I'll let you answer how it's been.
I've had a good time. I think this also
Very
is
different
it's
sides
a
to the question
slightly
response.
the caveat is that I did take off work today, so my content is different from how it would normally be if I were working my 9 to 5. Huge caveat there. I did potentially maximize, but that's how I like to spend my time outside of my corporate 9 to 5.
Yes.
I think
lifestyle influencer.
more seriously though, it has been really great. I think I am someone who has a somewhat interesting relationship with social media, and that I don't love posting on it, in the sense that I don't love the social aspect of it, but I love the documentary aspect of it. And I've always been interested in that documentary aspect of it. Like I journal a lot. Like I journal, that's for myself, but like in terms of social media, I think ideally I would love to create content that really does like show my day in a life, right? But because I am less inclined toward the social aspects of it, I wouldn't do that independently, or at the current moment, I'm not very inclined to do it independently. So I was excited when we talked about the four of us doing it, because I was like, oh my God, so I don't have to do this alone. So I did push, like Megan pushed for it. And then yesterday I was like, guys, so how are we doing this?
Yeah, no, I think you guys have been a good tag team.
Yeah, I was excited for this. But I think that also is the beauty of the four of us doing this together, which is that it just for me, it's more comfortable to do it with you guys, and I feel more, we can unpack this or we don't have to, but like I just feel more confident calling myself a creator, like doing launch with the rest of you guys.
Yeah,
so.
I'm comfortable saying I'm friends with you all now. Like after this experience, now I feel like before this, none of those hangouts. No, not when we traveled or no. This Austin, jury's still out for Austin if we can be friends or not. All right, let's close out by talking about what our hopes are for season 2 for launch as a platform, both for us like individually, I guess, with where we're going with our content, and then also where we want to take the group stuff as well. I'll start so you guys all have a second to think. I think for me, I really want, I guess, with Accessible Intelligence season 2, my goal is the group goal, like just make this really well documented, like build in public journey of 3 months. Like it feels like long or short, depending on how you look at it, but it's like this defined period around like I want to look back at the first 3 months of this year and be like just really clear like what we did. That would feel like super fulfilling to me. I think with launch, with it being I've launched a few Notion sites at this point, but I want this to be the best one yet. So I want it to be super clear and really obvious, like how it highlights our work, and also really obvious how people can get involved. And it should be very obvious, but if anyone ever has any feedback, please tell me. And then I will add that I want one of our activities of the first quarter to be an in-person event. It could be as easy as like a live podcast. I did get confirmation we could use a studio space today, so hopefully that is something that will be good, because I think we grow so much faster when we can like talk to people about this idea. So I would say those are the 3, like continue producing a really good podcast and a really good Notion site, and to meet some people who are also interested in this in person and to be able to talk to them in that way. Whoever's ready.
I could go. I think for me, kudos to that. And adding on to that, a lot of what I'm excited for is how we were just discussing how we want to frame the second season, which is the first season we talked a lot about what is the problem, diagnosing the problem, and how it affects us. And we see season 2 as the and so what? And what are we going to do about it? How are we going to do it? And so I'm excited to carry that out and to actually, put our money where our mouth is, to try to create an ecosystem where we maybe mind meld our ideas together. Try get on the same wavelength, same page to really see intersection between our ideas, where it's not, one person posting one thing, one person posting a video about another, but really seeing intersection and how we can grow together because of that.
Mind melding, that's a good one. But I think maybe the alternative perspective or the alternative description I would provide is I want to jointly establish a framework that we all feel comfortable using. And I think that really gets to maybe the collaboration bit of what you were saying, which is I mean, we're still doing our individual stuff, right? Like the goal of this of launch is that it should amplify and build upon what we're doing. And I hope that I really hope that what we do carries over with launch carries over to what we do outside of it as well, and vice versa. Right? Like I want these things to sort of meld, whatever you call it, increasingly. But like really, I think like I kind of started this episode saying, like, there are so many different perspectives on like whatever is happening now with Gen Z and the economy or what have you, right? There's so many issues. I think I want us to be able to really cleanly articulate a perspective on it, and that could be a future episode, but really cleanly articulate a perspective and really operationalize it in our content here, but also in our individual content. And a sort of second goal is to really, especially in the beginning stages of launch, to build the appropriate systems for it, to make sure that this is something sustainable and something that also can extend beyond the four of us.
Yeah. I guess to add on to that, I'm most excited about bringing building in public to what we're all doing. I think having started my account and started more seriously building in public over the past few months, I feel like I've learned a lot. And I'm excited to bring that to what we're all doing, to amplify what each and every one of us are up to and what launch more collectively is. And also to hopefully use that as a tool to bring other people more closely into what we are working on, and to connect with other people who are also interested in doing the things that we are doing currently. So yeah.
Well said all around. Well, guys, that's the end of first episode, season 2, and I think it's only up from here. That was Accessible Intelligence. We're back, better than ever. I'm sure you have missed us dearly, but we want to say Happy New Year to everybody, and that you can find this episode and all of our other content on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and now YouTube. I think YouTube's been around for a bit, but it's sticking around as a podcast platform, so I'm sure some people at least are going to find this on YouTube. And to find anything we talked about, our articles, launch as our platform, our accounts, that will all be in the show description. So check us out there. But until next time, guys, which will hopefully be on a bi-weekly cadence, and we will hopefully also have studio recording next time too, putting that out there. We'll see you then. Take care.
Bye.